Good afternoon, everyone. I hope everybody's properly caffeinated for the mid-afternoon stretch. We have a wonderful panel right now to look at one of the core issues involving fintech and the financial industry in Europe, and that, of course, is the advent of Payment Services Directive 2. Such a sexy title, isn't it? PSD2, as it's known. I'm sure that you've heard a great deal about this in the last couple of years. What we're going to do today in this panel is really unpack what's happening, what it means, and how this will change the fintech story in the European Union in the time to come. I'd like to begin, if I may, with an observation. I've been reporting on this issue for some time, and in talking with CEOs of big banks in Europe, the chairpeople of big banks, talking to a lot of senior executives, and they all seem to have this consensus when it comes to PSD2. They hate it. They don't like it. They think it's a mistake. They wish it had never happened. Now, they don't say this publicly, but in private, the opinions are pretty sharp. So I'd like to just address that at the outset, if we may. Severin, you're the Deputy CEO of Société Générale. Can you share with us your perspective on the PSD2? Is this a mistake?
When this idea has been launched and studied, all the banks have considered that it was a very great mistake. You have so many risks attached to that, the liability question was pending, and so on. But now it's a given. And when it's a given, the question for us is how we can really convert that as a big opportunity. And we can say now that it's already an opportunity for banks, and we have a lot of things. The first thing I would like to mention is we have completely review the way we will organize our internal information system, and then the way we are going through the innovation processes within the bank. So there is a real big opportunity behind that if you take as a given. There is still some risks, and perhaps we can discuss those risks, which are not completely addressed in the current legislation. And in France in particular, we have still some big issues to address before giving a pure positive view on the DSP2.
Now, this law is designed to stoke competition in banking, to open banking up, to stoke the opportunities for fintechs, and to ultimately improve consumer choice. So what's wrong with that? Sébastien?
Well, if I can say a word about that, I think whether it's good or bad, I think there are very good things in the PSD2 there, but there are also bad things. And let me summarize what the PSD2 is about, actually. I think we're in a unique position as banking industry. I think the only sector in the world which is requested to a certain extent to build, to offer an interface for free to their competitor for them to take away our clients. That's what is about a PSD2 to a certain extent.
In other words, the institutions are being asked to help the very rivals that want to eat their lunch.
To a certain extent. No,
we don't.
It's a bit extreme. I'm just trying to explain that. Well, the PSD2 is, of course, raised a lot of questions, as I mentioned. No, it's a given, so we'll have to live with it, and we'll not only live with it. I think banks will also use it as an opportunity. No, maybe just to finish on this specific aspect, I think still, although it's a given, there may be some aspect of the PSD2 on which we will need to come back at a later stage. I think it was mentioned the issue of liability, the liability issue, the way it's now regulated is not very balanced. Another issue for us is the issue of reciprocity. We'll give access to our information, to our data, or at least to some of our data. It might be wise also to think whether, the banks could get also some data of fintech and big tech if they enter into this market as well. So those are issues that maybe need to be adjusted at a later stage.
Ruth, what are your thoughts on? You're in the trenches here. You work with regulatory issues at Citigroup. You're in an interesting perspective because you're an American bank but operating in Europe. What are the kind of top-of-mind issues when it comes to the PSD2 story right now?
Well, I think first of all, the PSD2 gave the industry a kick up the back properly.
Okay.
Because banks sit on a lot of data, and banks have never really been great working that data for clients or for themselves. And sometimes they're hid behind data privacy rules saying we can't really touch the data. There was a lot of uncertainty. And PSD2 basically said, look, anyone can come along, open banking, access to accounts, and work with your client's data. And so banks said, well, might as well then do it ourselves, because if anyone now can rock up being licensed and work with my client's data, offer new solutions, value added. And maybe back to Sebastian's point, the payment is still executed by the bank. The customer is still a bank customer. The funds still sit in the bank account, but we're talking about the whole data economy that is being built around it. And this is now really where the banks are engineering themselves to be more innovative with their own value-added services, but also back to the fintech point, whilst years ago everyone thought fintechs are going to eat our lunch, we are at a point where we collaborate and we design better solutions together. And arguably, banks are not good at everything. I mean, if you look at data analytics, all the behavioral stuff. I mean, these are things that are now being provided by amazing firms outside, and we're bringing this in to make it a safer and more efficient client environment.
Well, Severin, could you share with us how Société Générale is doing that? I mean, and how that mindset has changed to a more collaborative approach as the fintech story has evolved?
Yeah, if I may come back to your question regarding the customer advantage of DSP2, clearly the intention of the lawmakers was this. The question now, to be sure that it will be a real advantage, we have to address the pending issue in terms of security. So for me, it's still
security.
With this new entrance, new participant to the payment ecosystem, you are extremely increasing the surface exposed to the cyber risk of your own clients. And today, at a bank, we have clearly, as an obligation, also as a responsibility, to protect our client against that cyber risk. Now we have to be sure that the extension of all the surface exposed to cyber criminals will be also correctly protected for our clients. That's the first point I have still in mind, to be sure that it will be a real advantage at the end for all the clients.
Are you saying that's still a vulnerability in the law right now?
Yes, absolutely, in my view. Okay. So regarding your question, the fintech ecosystem has been seen for a long time ago, if I may, 5 years ago, as a potential threat for the banking industry. And today, I would say that it's a completely different view we have as Société Générale, but not only as Société Générale. All the banking industry today are seeing the fintech ecosystem and the innovative ecosystem as a huge potential for partnership, as a new potential for agility for us, as a new potential for new services development. So we have clearly implemented in our company a real relationship with the ecosystem. We have dedicated teams, which is in relationship with everywhere in the world, if I may say, to see what we can do with these new players in our world. And we are considering every type of cooperation. We can take over. We took over the first aggregator in the French market 3 years ago. We take 100%.
Which one was that?
Fiduceo has been taken over by Boursorama, which are a pure online bank. In that case, we have decided to take 100% of this fintech. We considered it was the right timing to do that. In some other cases, we are taking minority shareholding, and we do that with StackPay, which is another fintech, which we have developed for African banking activity. We have a dedicated new wallet for African customers. In some cases, we have only industrial partnership or commercial partnership, or we are just developing proof of concept and so on. So we are completely flexible to that, and we are very much, and this brings to us a completely new way and view in terms of innovation process. We were probably infected by a syndrome in the past, like big companies, which was an NIH syndrome, the not invented here syndrome. Société Générale had, during all his history, a good track record in terms of innovation. We have been the equity derivative innovators. We have been the leasing inventors. We have been structured financing innovators. It was all internal innovation.
I mean, the bank had to build everything itself.
Yes. Today, it's not working like that. Today, we have to really open our mindset and really to have this relationship. And we have also to, if I may say, import within the company the way the fintech world is working. That's the reason why we just started at the beginning of this year an internal startup calls, where we have more than 15,000 people within the company worked to be selected with their own entrepreneur ID. And now we have selected 70 internal startups, But those internal startups are working like external startups in our own incubators or in external incubators as they want. So you're right to say that we have completely changed, thanks to the fintech development and fintech, if I may, agility and dynamism, our way of working in terms of innovation. There is other dimension, but I speak only about innovation.
So, I mean, fintech clearly has changed your models, changed your approach to innovation. We've seen this across the banking sector. Sébastien, your organization represents 3,500 financial institutions across Europe. So there must be a panoply of different approaches, takes to both PSD2 and fintech evolution. But what's kind of the overriding theme that you see coming out of your membership? Are they apprehensive about PSD2? Do they just see it as something they're going to have to comply with, so they're getting on with it?
Well, as I mentioned, no, it's a given, and I think the banks will indeed use it as an opportunity. And following up on what was said, I think this will help actually banks also to cooperate very well with fintech startups. It was said a few years ago, fintech startups were perceived as the competitors of banks. They will eat in the business. No, it's not at all the sense within our membership. To the contrary, we go to full cooperation. And actually, some CEOs says as such, the fintech startups are actually the best friends of banks because they help us to modernize, to innovate, and at the end to better serve our customers. Right. So that's positive. Now, in terms of PSD2, there will be cooperation. Banks themselves may evolve into more platform banking. So there will be, of course, competition amongst banks at that level. There will be winners, there will be losers. And what is clear is that a new ecosystem is being created. A new ecosystem which will not only include banks, but also other actors, non-banks, with whom the banks will cooperate in the future. Now, one very important aspect which was raised, I'd like to highlight it as well, is the question of cybersecurity and that data protection, data privacy here. Because this new ecosystem being created, we have to make sure not only banks, but also the other layers which will work with banks will scale up, I would say.
So you think the cybersecurity issue is one that it's still a little outstanding? We still don't really know how that story unfolds.
I think it's just the beginning, the cybersecurity issue. We need to make sure that the full ecosystem is safe enough. You can mention the Facebook case recently. This makes a lot of us afraid, of course.
Of course. No, that's right. This morning we heard a lot about, in an earlier panel which touched on open banking, about the kind of explosion of APIs that we've seen and how this process is perhaps even more important than the advent of PSD2 in terms of changing the marketplace. Ruth, I mean, talk about that if you could, and just speak to this kind of blossoming of APIs that are coming out, and also whether, I mean, can banks truly take advantage of this?
Yes, I think the API story is a bit of a tricky one, and maybe just hanging on from that data security point. So what we've seen in the market before PSD2 appeared was that a number of firms were screen scraping, so they were taking data from client accounts directly, seeing a lot of data, so seeing everything really. And of course PSD2 and PSD is about payments. So this is more about getting access to payment data to facilitate new payment-related solutions. Now we have until end of next year when specific technical rules come into play. Until then, a number of markets allow players to continue this practice. But we also now have GDPR in place. So we have a bit of an issue in terms of the bank being liable to customers' data and data privacy, and the potential that some third parties, that the customer is not really understanding exactly what they do, may take your data. Obviously, everyone is now subject to GDPR. But I guess my point is that the supervision of a plethora of lots of little firms that may not have the same security than big firms, that may not have the same data governance, is now handling data, which is a real expensive commodity, through this opening up. And I'm also quite weary that a number of people would like to hold on to a lot of data. So how many will really converge only to specific APIs that are being created? I think the API economy is a much bigger piece. It facilitates new types of payment solutions. We in Citi have actually signed up in the UK open banking as the first bank to be part of the open banking connectivity in order to be able to deliver new types of payment solutions. Because we
So
would
Citi is signing up almost like a fintech.
Yes, because we have clients like a Facebook or Google that want to be able to get paid by their customers in a different way. They want to request to pay, certain new hybrid models of payment that don't exist in the classical
But
bank
won't other
model.
big banks be upset about that? They're going to be like, okay, it's fine and well if a fintech signs on through this, but whoa, Citigroup.
But banks can do exactly the same. And that's the same thing with PSD2. Banks can play the role of a third party accessing other bank accounts, which is getting a bit funny on industrial espionage at some stage. But you could, through the API economy, plug yourself into different flows. And of course, you could, as a bank, potentially design more things than just PSD things,
Right.
because you can do everything you're potentially regulated. So that's also the innovation potential and the collaboration to think about things that today are not at all on the table and maybe far beyond payments, because it's a data economy.
I mean, data is the lifeblood of this
exactly.
entire economy that we're talking about here. And I wonder, given what we've seen in terms of the innovation on the part of many fintechs that have found new ways to manage financial data, present it to customers, leverage it, et cetera, I just wonder, have the banks waited too long to get on this and find a way to innovate with data? Is it a little too late for them? I mean, are they going to be dependent on fintech innovation to really get up to speed?
If I may.
Of course.
I don't think it's too late. You're right to say that it's an urgent thing to do.
Yeah.
Why? Today, when you look at the assets within a traditional bank like we are, there are still strong assets. The first is clearly our client franchise, and we have 35 million of clients in the country where we are. And it's an asset that our fintech partners could have access to first. The second point is, you're right to say that the data, which are not belonging to the bank, but we are just in the safe of the banks, are a real assets. And you're right to say. And the biggest point I see in our collaboration with our innovation fintech environment is the access to those data. And the bank have not completely designed the way that they will offer and will give access to the data that we have and the information behind the data more than that, which is for me a second asset we are working on. And then the third asset, which is also something very positive in the relationship we could have with our partners in the ecosystem, is our third-party status, a trusted third-party status.
Right.
And we can make polls, and you will see that the banks, despite the big mistakes we made in the past, are still seen as a trusted third party. So it's main assets where we can really work on in this relationship we have with our partners, fintech or even GAFAs, which is interesting today. So my point today, you're right, is to really accelerate in that direction. You say it's too late? I don't think so. And I come back to your previous point regarding API. Because for us, we have designed that in our IT strategy as API first now for already 2 years. And we have seen that to give access, for example, to the data that we have safe in our system to third party, we have to have a real strategy there, a real security, a real authentication strategy, a real referential strategy. All that, the access will be through the APIs, certainly, but it's changing all your IT architecture within the bank, which is very interesting today. So we have redesigned that in this version. Secondly, it's changed completely our IT delivery process. We were in the past with an IT project during 18 months, 2 years. It's not anymore working on. So with this new technology, we have a real going, not as Amazon, it's not minutes by minutes we are putting in production, but it's now we have from years to months, now it's a question of days in terms of production capability we have for new application. And it's changed also our innovation capability, as I said. So behind this API is a lot of things we can say. And DSP2 is it's important, but it's something which is minor compared to the real change, if I may say.
The real change is...
Yes, that the APIization of an IT legacy system is like augmented, if I may say, augmented capability. This new technology gives us a capability to augment the capacity of our legacy asset.
Right.
Like you do with human, you can augment with new technology, but we do the same with legacy asset. It's changed completely the strategy of the bank. We are not anymore considering to move from a big core banking system on the shelves, which is bring by editors. Not anymore. So it's a big question for the editors industry. But for us, it's clearly now viewed as a a much efficient and agile strategy.
Well, let me throw this question to the three of you. I mean, given what you've just said, Severin, about how the very model, the very process of innovation has changed inside Société Générale, and this is the case in virtually all big banks, have we reached a point in the cycle where you've got some stuff you're developing organically, you've got other strategic deals that you've done with fintechs, either through an accelerator program, a minority stakeholding, maybe an outright acquisition? Is there going to be more deals now? Are we going to see more activity in banks hooking up with startups, especially startups that have been around for 5-6 years or at that Series A, Series B level, have revenue? I mean, what do you anticipate on the deal side of this story? What do you think, Sébastien?
I can't take the point.
You talk to thousands of banks all the time.
Well, we're still a bit out of the business of the deals business as a trade federation, of course. But I think to a certain extent there are already a lot of cooperation deals ongoing, no?
There are.
I mean, many banks have already made deals with, fintech startups. They have developed their own startup. They are incubators. So it's already happening to a certain extent. You have seen also in the media, it's happening also in some other part of the world. There was a recent deal with Amazon and a bank in the US. So
right.
I think it's already happening to a certain extent.
Ruth?
And it will just, increase.
I think it's both the deal side, but also there's still a lot to fix in banking. And I think that's the potential for these businesses, right? If you think about the agile piece, you have to digitize your data. You have to cleanse your data. You have to restructure it and open it up. Data shouldn't be sitting in applications. Data needs to be able to travel, but you need security, cryptography solutions to attribute where it can travel to. There's a complete data architecture redesign, and if you think about that happening in big banks, there's a lot going on. And so we've invested a lot in fintechs on our venture side,
yes.
But we have exactly the same internal startup culture for many years. And now we're starting to see really mature products that have been funded in seed A and are now getting to, and they grow fast. And they can then provide really the scalability that large banks need, because we can't work with a business that is very small and can maybe fix a small part of our business. It has to be enterprise-wide.
If I may take the question also. Today, clearly, in the traditional banking industry, we are spending a lot of money to transform an existing business model, to transform existing products, to transform legacy systems. We have to do to really increase the real potential thanks to this big opportunity where we have. Now, and to answer your question, I really think that there will be more deals.
There will be more deals.
Yes. And specifically on one side, we have to invent new services and new products, also as a bank.
Yes.
We have new competition entering, coming from GAFAs, coming from telco operators, coming from everywhere. We have also to think about that. And probably in this innovation capability in terms of new services around the data, probably, and we have ideas around that already, our fintech partnerships could really bring more quickly new services. And we have this API management platform already, so we can welcome them on our platform immediately. So my point is, yes, there will be new deals if there is new services offering, new concept, not only doing the same products we are doing today, not only that, because we are transforming ourselves on that field. Okay. We need real innovation in products, services.
Very good, very good. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there. All you entrepreneurs out there, you heard it. More deals coming, so bring your pitches to Severin. Thank you so much, and please thank Sébastien, Severin, and Ruth.